December 1941. Across the Pacific, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers move in total silence. No radio traffic. No lights. No mistakes. They are not reacting to the world. They are about to reshape it. Inside their steel hulls is something no Navy has ever concentrated before. Hundreds of aircraft, trained crews, rehearsed timing, and a doctrine built on one belief. Strike first, strike hard, and break the enemies before the war even begins. When Pearl Harbor burns, the shock isn't just American. Every Navy on Earth understands the same truth at the same time. The rules of naval warfare have changed. This is the story of every major Japanese warship used in World War II. Not as categories on a chart, but as individual machines, each built for a purpose, each sent into a war that would consume them. A fleet that came closer to controlling the Pacific than anyone expected, and collapsed when steel, courage, and doctrine collided with reality. Battleships. Yamato. Yamato was not built to fight ships. She was built to end arguments. Displacing over 70,000 tons and armed with 9 18.1-inch guns, Yamato embodied Japan's belief that decisive power could still be delivered by sheer force. Her armor could withstand anything afloat. Her guns could obliterate cruisers in a single salvo. But Yamato was a weapon born too late. By the time she entered service, aircraft carriers had already replaced battleships as the arbiters of naval power. As a result, Yamato spent most of the war hidden, too valuable to risk, too symbolic to lose. When she finally sailed in April 1945 during Operation Tengo, it was not to win, but to die. Sent toward Okinawa on a one-way mission, Yamato never reached her destination. American aircraft overwhelmed her defenses. Bombs and torpedoes tore her open. She capsized and exploded, killing over 3,000 men. The most powerful battleship ever built never fired her main guns at an enemy ship. Musashi. Musashi, Yamato's sister, shared the same fate, just earlier. She was sunk in the Battle of Leyte Gulf after absorbing an astonishing number of hits. Her loss proved that even the most heavily armored ship could not survive sustained air attack. Kongo. Hai. Kirishima. Haruna. The Kongo-class fast battleships were veterans of an older age, modernized to survive a new one. Faster than most battleships, they escorted carriers, bombarded islands, and fought fiercely in surface actions around Guadalcanal. Hai and Kirishima were lost in brutal nighttime battles. Kongo and Haruna survived longer, only to be sunk by submarines and aircraft. They fought hard, but they were fighting a war that had already passed them by. Nagato, Mutsu, Fuso, Yamashiro. These older battleships represented Japan's early naval power. They were slower, less protected, and increasingly sidelined as fuel shortages worsened. Some were sunk by submarines, others by air attack, and some never left harbor again. They did not die gloriously. They simply faded from relevance. Aircraft carriers. Akagi. Akagi was the heart of Japan's carrier doctrine. Converted from a battlecruiser hull, she led the strike on Pearl Harbor. Her air group was elite. Her crews were experienced. In the early months of the war, Akagi symbolized Japanese dominance. She was sunk at Midway, caught on deck with fueled aircraft when American dive bombers struck. One moment of vulnerability ended her war. Kaga. Kaga followed Akagi into history. Another conversion, another giant, another victim of Midway. When Kaga sank, Japan lost not just a carrier, but irreplaceable pilots and institutional experience. Soryu and Hiryu. These purpose-built carriers were fast, aggressive, and lethal. Hiryu briefly turned the tide at Midway, launching counterattacks that damaged USS Yorktown. But she too was found and destroyed. Midway ended Japan's offensive momentum in a single day. Shokaku. Shokaku survived Midway and fought on through Coral Sea, the Solomons, and beyond. She was one of Japan's finest carriers, well-armored, capable, resilient. She was finally sunk during the Battle of the Philippine Sea by American submarines. Zuikaku. Zuikaku outlived every other Pearl Harbor carrier. By Leyte Gulf, she carried aircraft flown by barely trained pilots. She was used as bait, sacrificed to draw American carriers away. She sank with her flags flying, marking the end of Japan's carrier era. Ryujo, Shoho, Zuho. These light carriers filled secondary roles: scouting, escort, limited strikes. They were easier to lose, and they were lost quickly. Shoho became the first Japanese carrier sunk in the war. Junyo, Hayo, Taiho. Converted and rushed into service as losses mounted. These carriers arrived too late. Taiho, Japan's most modern carrier, was sunk on her first combat deployment by a single submarine torpedo. Japan had ships. What lacked were pilots. Cruisers. Takao Tego. Powerful heavy cruisers armed with long lance torpedoes. They excelled in night combat, but were increasingly vulnerable to air attack. Atego was sunk by a submarine at Leyte Gulf. Myoko Haguro. Veterans of early victories, later hunted relentlessly by aircraft and submarines. Haguro was sunk by British destroyers in one of the last surface actions of the war. Mogami. Originally armed with 15 guns, later rebuilt as an aviation cruiser. Mogami was damaged at Midway and later destroyed at Leyte Gulf. Innovation could not compensate for strategic collapse. Sendai Agano. Light cruisers used for scouting and destroyer leadership. Most were lost during the brutal attrition around Guadalcanal. Destroyers. The Sharp Edge. Fubuki. The destroyer that redefined the class. Fast, heavily armed, terrifying at night. Kajiro and Yugimo. The backbone of Japan's destroyer force. They escorted fleets, ran supplies, and fought to exhaustion. One by one, they were lost to radar-guided gunfire and air attack. Matsu. A destroyer built for desperation. Simplified, slower, cheaper. Japan needed numbers, not perfection. By then, even numbers weren't enough. Submarines. A war fought wrong. I-class fleet submarines. Large, long-range, capable of carrying aircraft and midget subs. They shelled coastlines and hunted warships, but ignored merchant shipping. While Germany strangled economies, Japan chased prestige. Midget submarines. Used at Pearl Harbor and later operations. Brave crews. Minimal impact. Kaiten. Human-piloted torpedoes. Weapons of despair. They sank a handful of ships and consumed their pilots. By 1945, the Imperial Japanese Navy was gone. Not defeated in a single climactic battle, but ground down, starved of fuel, stripped of pilots, and overwhelmed by an enemy that could build ships faster than Japan could sink them. Japan's navy was terrifying. It pioneered carrier warfare, perfected the night torpedo attack, and built some of the most advanced warships of the era. Japanese sailors fought with skill, courage, and fanatical determination. But none of it mattered when facing an industrial colossus that treated ships as replaceable and losses as temporary setbacks. Japan's navy failed not because its ships were inferior, but because its strategy was flawed, its resources limited, and its industrial capacity limited. You can build the largest battleship in history, but if you can't fuel it, if you can't protect it, if you can't replace it when it sinks, it's just expensive steel. The lesson of the Imperial Japanese Navy is dominance is weak. Power is rare. Their wars are won not by the biggest ships, but by the nation that can keep winning with the best ships. If you want to explore more about the warships, things, and aircraft at the high level, check out the rest of the show. We cover the machines that shape the history with the depth and seriousness they deserve. Consider subscribing if this resonated with you. Thanks for watching.